Hello. All right. Okay, let me start including people, and think we can aim to start very soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm just waiting a few more minutes before more people can join, and then we can start the webinar. Thank you. All right. Let me then start. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Gaia, and I work at Input, international network of people who use drugs. And today we are organizing a webinar on grant making. This is the second stage of the grant life cycle. And just looking to see if someone else will join. But in the meantime, I think we can hit it off with starting slides. Right. Right. I hope everyone can see my slides. So basically, what is grant making? Right. Grant making aims to translate the funding requests into the grants that are ready for implementation. And we will hear more about this from our representative from the Global Fund, as well as from the countries and their experiences. But the idea and the main objective of this webinar is to really exchange country-specific experience and grant making in Grant Cycle 6 and Grant Cycle 7, and hear from the key population representatives, including people who use drugs and sex worker community, how this process went. So this is really an open ground for everybody to, exchange their thoughts. And really, I think one of the issues that we had heard from the community and key population is that this process is often happening behind closed doors between the PRs and the country team. So we would really like to see how the minimum expectations that were included at the start of Grant Cycle 7 are being implemented and how we can make this process more efficient. So our agenda is pretty packed today. We have 1.5 hours, starting with the CRG Department Technical Advisor Hye-young Lim, talking about the overview of the grant making, the process, the stages and opportunities for community engagement. And then we will hear from our community representatives from Kenya, Nigeria, and Ukraine, and hear how this process went in their respective countries. From Kenya, we will hear from Rosemary Kasiba, the speaker, and the CCM representatives from the sex worker community, who will talk about experience in Grant Cycle 6. And from Nigeria, we'll hear from Anedi Akpan, the chairperson from the Drug Harm Reduction Advocacy Network. And Ukraine will be the speaker from Ukraine, Oleg Demaretsky, representative of Ukrainian Network of People Who Use Drugs. And we will make sure to accommodate enough time for the Q&A. Just a quick reminder about our ground rules that please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. The meeting will be recorded, and if you have any objections, please let us know. Just a small note on that as well. If you have noticed, there may be also some AI recordings. So we would kindly ask you to not turn that on, because we will share our recording and the link later on. We have also the Q&A chat open. So whenever you have a question, please make sure to put it in the chat. And you can also introduce yourself and your organization and country in the chat box. And in the end, of course, as our tradition, we will take a group photo. If you don't want to take your picture taken, of course, you can keep your camera off. And we have also the translation in Spanish and in Russian available. And therefore, to make sure that you use that, please click the interpretation button. And also, if you just need to listen to the original audio, you can then turn the language off. Otherwise, you can just do it vice versa and click mute original audio. So this is the just a quick overview of today's webinar, and I will then pass the floor to our first speaker from the Global Fund, Hye-young. Hye-young, hi. We don't hear you. Can you please unmute yourself?
You would know by then. I should know how to unmute myself before I speak. My apologies for that. I'm really glad to be part of this discussion. I see many of the familiar faces or names. So thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Hye-young. I'm a community rights gender investment advisor at the Global Fund. My focus area is Asia Pacific, but I'm really happy to interact with many of you and also hear the regional diversities and the challenges that you may face. So, Gaia, I think you are projecting, but
yeah, I'm fixing it now. I think it's right. Yeah.
Next slide, please. So what I had, I think Gaia had kind of summarized what the grant making period is really about, but maybe just to quickly recap, because I think many of you are familiar with the funding request development, but as your engagement with not only the communities of people who inject drugs or use drugs, but all the communities' engagement is in a way reduced. It gets reduced as the process moves along. So just want to make sure that we all understand what we mean by the grant making process. So grant making process is basically what starts right after the TRP approves the funding request. So TRP approves the funding request, and TRP makes recommendations how the funding request can be developed. Applicants, generally PRs and CCMs, and together with the country team, work together on the response, basically responding to CCM, how they're going to address the the TRP recommendation in the funding request and through the grant-making period. And then grant-making period typically involves implementers in the Global Fund. And during the grant-making period, which lasts about 4 to 5 months, it is really when we discuss the nitty-gritty details of the activities and divide the investments among the implementers. And during the grant-making period, it's also the time where some of the countries will need to select the SRs, sub-recipients, and that process is also, also managed by the CCM, but primarily by the principal recipient. And now I just want to move to this next slide, please. So during the grant-making period, as I mentioned, somehow we understand the funding request development period, there's a lot of TAs for the communities to be engaged. And I think it's more open period with the country dialogue processes where we explicitly made an effort to hear from communities and civil society on their priorities. And as you know, the community priority list is part of the mandatory documents to be submitted together with a funding request. So that is a process where we ensure the community is engaged in the funding request development process. But I'm also acutely aware that as we move to the TRP recommendation and the grant making, the opportunity for the communities to be engaged, communities and civil society to be engaged and follow the process is reduced. However, we are really hoping to make sure that communities and civil societies are engaged and maintained informed throughout the process. So one way of doing it is that, as I listed in the minimum expectations, we do require that all the funding request documents are published externally and following the TRP recommendations as well. And through the CCM, all the CCM members, including civil society, community members, should receive the funding request documents, the key documents, as well as grant-making milestones and notifications. Then the onus is on the communities and civil society representatives to liaise with their constituencies to share the information. Then we expect the CCM to convene at least 2 meetings during the grant making to really update the CCMs on how things are going. And through that meeting, we expect the PRs to inform the CCM the key activities, what are the key focus of the funding request, and how this will impact the communities and civil society. And we do, while this is not included here, we do expect the country team to organize at least 1 meeting during the grant making period with the CCM, with the full CCM, with the civil society and key populist representation to give them updates on how things are on the process and key contents of the funding request. So in this case, the role of the civil society and community representatives on CCM is very important in receiving the documents and liaising back with the communities. Next slide, please. However, we do understand, we have heard many, many challenges in the engaging with the CCMs from the civil society and the key civil society and community representatives on the CCMs. What we heard often is that sometimes the documents are not translated to local languages. It was not shared on time. They were not given enough time to really read through and digest and consult their communities. And also sometimes they are not provided with the support for them to be able to liaise back with the communities. We do understand we put a lot of responsibility on community and civil society representatives. While they have a seat in the CCM, we do expect them to liaise with their wide constituencies with a different interest and different focus. And I know this is a really heavy task unless there is support, not only the guidance or the policy level support, but also really the financial support for them to be able to liaise back with the communities. So as you know, the Global Fund within the CCM Secretariat budget, we require 15% set aside. This is to really support the communities and key populations representatives on the CCM to be able to perform their role as a representative, liaising back with their communities and constituencies. So I hope you will be able to ask your CCM Secretariat on this 15% set aside. That should be used to support the community engagement. And also there are different opportunities. So there will be ongoing Global Fund Community Engagement Strategic Initiative through the TAs and through the regional learning hubs. We hope to facilitate the continuing engagement of the communities in the grant-making period and beyond. And also, you probably have heard the initiative, and many of you may have actually interacted with the initiative. So my apologies if I'm sharing the information that you already have. But initiative, as one of their thematic areas, they support the CCM representation of the key populations community organization. So for instance, in Laos, the region where I'm supporting, in Laos, the civil society organization submitted a TA request to the initiative to seek their support, kind of longer term support to mentor and build a capacity and provide a space for their newly elected community civil society representatives on CCM to understand the functioning of the CCM and how best they can liaise with their own constituencies. So such TA can be mobilized through the initiative. And good thing about the initiative TA is that it can be a long-term TA. So for the case of Laos, the request is for 6 months. So it doesn't include only a couple of meetings with the constituencies or understanding how the Global Fund CCM works or understanding the policies and guidelines, but really have them mentor and support throughout the process until our representatives are at ease in the CCM, being able to engage in the CCM. Because we do understand that with the short-term TAs of capacity building once or twice, it's really not going to support to engage in such a complex beast like Global Fund and the CCM space, which can be quite hostile to the civil society and community representatives. And for the initiative, as you know, the eligible countries are mostly Francophone Africa, but there are Ghana and Mozambique and other countries that are falling, I think Uganda maybe also falling in the Anglophone African context. But also there are Asia Pacific countries where the support is also available. If you're interested in seeking the initiative TA request opportunity or the Global Fund, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I will link you up with the relevant regional advisors to work with you and support you through the TA process. And of course, there's also a UNA's technical support mechanism that can be mobilized and available for 52 countries to build the civil society and community the capacity to engage with the CCM and engage with the Global Fund processes. I think that is my last slide. I understand I have 8 minutes, so I hope I didn't go beyond my eight minutes, but I just want to highlight that, we, within the Global Fund, we also have a CCM hub that also works with the CCM that meant to provide support to the key populations and civil society representation. If you have any challenge in engaging with your CCM, or if you would like to learn more about how to access a 15% set aside, please do not feel shy to engage with us. Just reach out to us. We will link you up with the relevant people in the CCM hub who can really guide you and work with you through navigating this complex CCM mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hae-young. Very insightful and really great overview of the process. And thanks also for highlighting the opportunities that exist not only through the Global Fund, but also other potential donors. So yeah, really make use of Hae-young. Please reach out as she suggested. And I hope that was really useful. So without further delay, I will now turn to Rosemary from Kenya, from the SWAP ambassadors. Rosemary?
Yes. Can you guys hear me? My name is Rosemary Kasiva. I come from Kenya. I am a sex worker and I work with an organization called SWAP Ambassadors. SWAP Ambassadors is a sex worker-led and run organization, which is also a member of the Kenya Sex Workers Alliance. First of all, I want to thank the previous speaker here. I believe they've been able to really bring us up to speed about what is expected about grant making. So I choose not to belabor, to repeat myself on what they were able to take us through. And of course, we are keen about the 15% they've talked about to support civil society and key population in as far as engaging our community members. It is something, yes, that has been spoken repeatedly, but to be very honest, just like they mentioned in their presentation, there is very little limited information that is known by communities as to how to access any support that we need. And like they have rightfully put it, after the grant-making process, after the writing process, there seems to be very, very little engagement with communities. And I can tell you for a fact, yes, we know grant making is bound to happen, but we don't really have the concrete days. And there's very, very little information that is known by the communities as to when this will happen and how we'll be engaged. And without wasting much of our time, I'd like us to go to, I think, the second or the third slide, because then I don't want to repeat myself. No, the other slide that follows about the challenges that we faced, the experiences that we had, and I think the challenges. One of the things that we'd really wish to bring to our attention is that during the NFM3 grant-making experience, we had not really strategized our community representatives in positions that were to influence the grant-making and ensure that communities will be able to benefit in the process. We really were not owning, and we didn't participate, for lack of a better word. We may have participated very minimally, but we didn't participate in a way that would have made a difference to see that communities were engaged and to ensure that we benefit in the same. We had not documented enough gaps, lessons learned, priority areas as to how to go about the grant making. Yes, this time we may have made a difference, we may have documented, but not as extensively or as much as would be expected, so that we can be able to have an upper hand during the grant making. Another challenge we had in the NFM3 is that we did not review and interact with the guidelines before the proposal. Like we went into the grant making space very ignorant, very naive, not really knowing what we expected and what was expected of us. But this time around, we hope that we have tried to see that we'll have aggressive and knowledgeable representatives to participate in the grant-making process. But again, we don't even know when the opportunity will be extended to us and do exactly what we would wish to have in that space. We have agreed on some modules, interventions, and activities that we'd want to see given priority during the grant-making period. And we want to align this with what went in the grant-making process itself. But then I think it's time we sat down with a consultant to review what exactly went down in the writing and see how this can marry with what you expect during the grant-making process. Once again, the process of sitting down and having that review and engaging with a consultant and ensuring that our priorities are put into consideration. We've not been able to do that once again, just like we did during the NFM3. And another challenge that we had then, and I can foresee the same happening this time again, is we don't have updated verified data for programming and for the decision making. Next slide, please. The real challenge we had in the other proposal, rather in the other grant making, is that so many of us were involved in shaping the proposal, but very few organizations, I would say like only 3 KP-led organizations were considered in the implementation. And we felt shortchanged because our expectation was that we are the communities, and if this has to focus around us, and if it has to be us in the middle of it, it would have been good to consider having communities in the implementation evaluation of the grant. We even saw that some of our community-led organizations were not considered at all in some of the diseases like TB and malaria. We hope that this time it will be different. We are trying to strategize, and we are also having conversations with the PR with the hope that come that time, there'll be that consideration. There was also delays in creating a grant-making team then, and even now, I can foresee the same lack of skills and inconsistency of communities involved in the writing and in the grant making, because I feel the ones who are involved during the grant writing process, if they can go ahead, the ones who are consistent and understood the grant making well and be considered to be there in the grant making process, then it would make a difference because they would understand what was put in there, a funding request, and therefore to try and match the same with the grant making. Like the previous speaker spoke about, is diminished community roles and engagement as time passes by. I would say right now, yes, our constituencies are really keen and asking us, when is the grant making process starting? But it's really out of place to realize that we are sitting at the CCM and we cannot particularly say when we expect the grant making process to take place. That shows how much disconnect is there. The grant status and relevant information, transparent, inclusive consultations, and feedback processes are really not there. Data, like I said earlier, remains a challenge. And even for the community members that were engaged and involved in grant making in the NFM3, they lacked transport. You remember that time it was during the COVID time, and most of engagements were being done on Zoom. They didn't even have enough bundles to participate. And when we had to go maybe physical meetings, they didn't even have allowances or transport to support in the engagement. The timelines were short and unclear. Like we didn't know when we were supposed to do when, at what time, and who this is supposed to go to. I mean, there was a lot of unclarity. I was among the people who were in the grant-making experience, I mean, a grant-making process of NFM3, but I must admit that we really were not sure of what exactly we were doing. The biggest challenge at that time was that we had diverse communities lacking one collective voice. So this time around, from the CCM all the way to community representatives, we have tried to ensure that we are approaching the grant making. We want to go together with a collective voice so that we can advocate in one voice for inclusion of community activities at different spaces. The next slide, please. What we learned from NFM3 will help us maybe in the grant making and implementation to inform and plan better. We hope that we can be able to equip communities with relevant data to support in the grant making process. I know in Kenya at the moment we're talking of VBS, stigma index, and we hope that this information will be able to be used and translate to support us maybe in pushing for our asks. In future, we'd want to orient and build skills and enhance communities' knowledge for impactful participation. It would also be nice to facilitate the communities with transport and communication for meaningful and uninterrupted participation. We are hoping and we are trying, I know with the trans population, also with the PWIDs, we have tried to negotiate and influence the PRs on affirmative actions and indicators that favor the community-led implementation activities by community-led SRs and SSRs. But then we are hoping that we can be able to hold them accountable, one, by the conversations we are having. Either we put them on email and we ensure that, one, they are also endorsed at the CCM so that we can be able to hold the PRs accountable when it comes to the affirmative action of activities that are to support community-led organizations. The grant-making process we hope to retain the available writing team members that were active and consistent during the writing process. And we also want to incorporate the consultants. Something else that lacked the other time and also was a challenge during the funding request is that we didn't have expertise of programs, M&D, and finance persons to consistently participate in the writing and who understand the global fund costing processes in grant making. We hope that we can have the same. We can have experts in grant making, M&D, finance persons, and programs to support in the same. I believe that's more or less the end of my presentation. Oh, it's continued. Together with the consultant, we hope we can review the submitted proposals to confirm if it reflects with our community asks and come up with an implementation plan as agreed in the writing. We want to relook at the activities to be implemented, action agreed in the proposals, if they are specific, realistic, and in line with the Kenya Aid strategic framework. We also want to find out recommendations shared by TRP, come up with disease-specific interventions and priorities. I know this is odd, but we prepare for a fight between the state and non-state actors. Implementation plan, we know this always happens, that you find that the state and the government wants to take some activities, and at the end of the day, these activities would have been better done and better implemented by communities if they are to have any impact, like when it comes to sensitizations of the law enforcers, when it comes to activities that are really community-oriented, it would be nice to have them implemented by communities, and it's for that reason that we want firm representation at the grant making to ensure, one, the money also comes to the PR2, so that when we are talking of program money, when we're talking of money to support our activities, at least we are sure PR2 has money. Communities should work as a team with progressive interactions for program money and community-driven indicators to be moved to PR2 and acknowledge, and the PR2 also should acknowledge the community's contributions in this. We also want to break down the work plan on activities to be conducted during the 3 years periods in quarterly basis to match the implementation, the meetings, the fair, the per diem, the outreaches, the targets. Also break down the budget done as lump sum in the proposal to activities and sub-activities, and mini costing to match the proposed community activities. I know the other time what really the trick that was used was on the sub-activities. You find that in the activity itself, it may speak like it will be done by the communities, but when it comes to the sub-activities and also sub-budgeting, you find that some activities that could be implemented by community-led organizations ended up going to the government. The next slide. Shukran. And that's how it ends. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Great presentation, and really showing all the nitty-gritty of the process. Rosemary, it's really very inspiring, and also like all the fights that you went through with your community is really something that we definitely, as people who use drugs, will learn. I will also like to encourage everyone to please post their questions and any suggestions or anything in the Q&A chat. So please feel free to ask the questions to everyone who is with us today. So please, yeah, don't hesitate, as we will ensure to have at least 30 minutes for proper discussion. I will now invite Anedi Akpan from Nigeria, from the Drug Harm Reduction Network, to join us. Anedi, can you please turn on the video and the voice? And yes, we can see your slides. Great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Gaia, for the opportunity to share my experience in the grants making of the Global Fund, Grant Cycle 7. Nigeria submitted in Window 1, and we're privileged to be involved in the process, from the community consultations to the grant writing to the grant making. And we are done with that. So I'll start. So I'll just start with a background of the grant making process. So the grant making process was actually led by DRAN for key populations. And DRAN is a network of drug user, it's a drug user community network made up of drug user-led organizations. DRAN led and also supported other key populations in the grant writing. We had technical assistance from the Global Fund, and we were supported by input to implement it. Grant was involved in the costing of the grant intervention for key populations, even though we couldn't get a consultant, but we were able to do it as key populations to show that we have the capacity to do what most people in country will not believe that key populations have the capacity to do. So basically what we need to know is that only interventions that are included in the grant proposal, country proposal, and budgeted for are eligible for grant making. So it is not like you're going to negotiate on a wish list. It's actually what you've been able to put into the country grant proposal and what has been approved by Global Fund that will eventually be used as a standard for the negotiation and the grant making process. So also know that there's also the technical review panel. So everything after you've written the grant proposal, the country grant proposal and the budgets, there's going to be a TRP review. The TRP is the technical review panel, and the TRP is going to give their comments. And then the country team is going to come back with the CCM and other actors and look at, the grants documents and then incorporate what has been given as feedback by the TRP into it. So you need to understand what was the TRP comments and know what has been incorporated into the grant. Okay, so how do you prepare for grants making? This is what we did. Might be different because different countries actually have a different how should I say, have a different engagement approach. For some countries, they're already on the CCM. But for a country like Nigeria, we do not have key populations on the CCM. And so we do not have a voice on it. So it might be a different approach, but more or less, it's almost similar, the approach that you need to take. So first of all, prepare to be involved in all the processes of the grant making. It is when it starts, you're not going to think about any other activity. So you just have to look at if the in Nigeria the agenda comes out maybe 2 days, 3 days, and so you just have to be on your toes and ready to know that you can travel if it's not going to happen, if it's in the year. It's going to be in the country capital, so you have to know that you will be ready to travel to the country capital at any point if you're not residing there. If you're residing there, it's a better deal for you. So you just have to know that you have to forgo everything and just be ready. At the drop of the pin, you're ready to engage. So get to know the comments of the TRP and the amounts allocated to the country. That is something very important. You might have written the grants and the total amount that was proposed in the grant. But of course, if it gets there and after the TRP review, the amount is reduced, then of course you'll need to know that there will have to be some trade-offs between some of your interventions and some of the things that you budgeted for. So you need to know, was it approved? Is the money going to be enough? Apart from that, when the country grant has been approved and okay, for the country, this is the total amount of money. What is the split? The split is usually done by the CCM. So the CCM comes to say the Global Fund is funding malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV. And so we are allocating so amount to malaria, so amount to TB, so amount for HIV. Of course, key populations fall into the HIV space. But for a country like Nigeria, from the grant writing, what we did was to push for the integration of tuberculosis and HIV. So our proposal was a joint TB HIV proposal. The country grants proposal was a joint TB HIV. So you'll need to know what has been split, the split between the three diseases. Of course, if you're looking at just HIV, then you understand that the split represents general population, it represents key populations, it represents women and young girls, adolescents and young people, and every other population in the HIV space that is being targeted. Okay. So when you have that idea of how much the funding split is, then you know that you're into fight to get a piece of the chunk of that money. But also, before you do all of that, you should be able to have built relationships. During the grant writing, you should have been able to build relationships, get contacts. If sometimes, like I used to do, even if you're not, that, information is not available, just call in to check in with those, who were in the grant writing phase. Most likely, whether they are going to be the representatives of the organization or not, the organization is definitely going to, in one way or the other, be engaged in the grant making process. So it's good to build those relationships, and also particularly with the principal recipients and the sub-recipients. In this case, after the TRP review, the CCM might have chosen the principal recipients and the sub-recipients. Of course, there's a process of bidding that goes on. In some countries, it's just selection or whatever the mechanism is, try to know. Or sometimes you might not even know about it. You might get to know about it during the grant making process that, okay, the PR and the SR has been changed, like happened in Nigeria. So, and then build alliances with other civil societies in the three disease areas. You're going to be looking at people living with HIV. Like I said, you're looking at adolescents and young people. You're going to be looking at, general populations, civil societies, on HIV and all other groups. You will need to build alliances with them because most of the interventions are going to be cross-cutting. And so you need to build an alliance so that when fund is allocated for the interventions, you should be able to negotiate some for your own population. In this case, my priority was people who use drugs, so you'll be able to negotiate for the people who use drugs. And then you need to build alliances with other populations within the HIV space. I've already said that. Share your areas of interest with your allies. Look at what is really important to you. For us in Nigeria, what was really important was a scale up of the major harm reduction interventions, the needle and syringe program, the OST was to introduce or pilot the OST. And then we really wanted to push for viral hepatitis intervention in Nigeria for people who use drugs. So you will also look at that and use the areas of joint interest interventions as a selling point with other HIV populations. Something I like to say off slide is that it's like a game of chess. So sometimes even pushing for areas of joint intervention, you have to know that if push comes to shove, you might need to drop some people off and just focus on what you want. Like we've had an example where, we were pushing for viral hepatitis for all key populations, but when it came to shove, we had to say, okay, at least let's have it for people who use drugs. It might raise mixed feelings, some people feeling that you betrayed them or something, but of course, what matters and who you represent is people who use drugs. So that is what first of all matters. But if in the interim, while it's going on, the going is fine and it hasn't gotten to show, then it's good to use the areas of joint interest and interventions as a selling point with other populations. You will need to know the size estimates of your population because sometimes money allocated for interventions for your population might be inadequate, and you need to, when you want to argue for increase in those sums, you will need to most times make justifications for it. And so the only justification you can make for it is by using the size estimates, and the intervention needs, and not just the intervention needs, you need to give solid reasons why you think that intervention is really needed for that population and how all of that links to, reducing HIV infections within the community and, in the country as a whole. Support other population areas, interventions of interest, unless it takes from yours. So while you're supporting others and, holding hands together, you need to also understand that you could hold hands together at the detriment of your own population getting enough funding for an intervention. So you be careful when it gets to the point where you think it might not be beneficial to your population. Maybe you can let go of the hands a little for the time being. have facts to support PWD interventions. I've said that. Anticipate attacks on core harm reduction interventions and prepare your defense. Exactly. For a country like Nigeria that criminalizes um, people who use drugs and most key populations, you should expect attacks whenever you say, oh, I want an intervention like OST or needle and syringe program. So you should always have your defense ready to say, this is why we want this program to go on, and this is the evidence. We had the pilot, so it was easy to bring up evidences. And maybe it will just help to, as a person, also have pictures on your phone where you can have site conversations, evidences, reports, to just call aside somebody who is really opposing the intervention to say, oh, you can look at this and see this is what happens and this is what we think. If this is done, it could help. So if you have that, and then of course you will really have, it might not be very convincing, but at least it helps to push some of your issues. And then you get into the main grants negotiations. You will make sure to be in the room where issues on harm reduction is discussed. You have different rooms. I don't know how it works in other countries, but in Nigeria, you're going to have different rooms. You have M&E, you have HIV, you have tuberculosis, you have human rights, you have so many different rooms, advocacy, different rooms, and different country teams engaging with different discussions. You have PR sections, you have CCM sections, you have so many different sections. Just as much as possible, as it is organized, these sections do not run concurrently. So there's always an opportunity to say this section runs for 2 hours. After that, the next section runs for 2 hours. After that, the next section runs for 1 hour. After that, so you'll just have to know the venues and be able to move from one room to the other, from one place to the other. And then also factor in that there are going to be times when, meetings will overlap. Understand where you need to prioritize. And so you be in those rooms.
Anita, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so you also watch out for implementation arrangements. That is something very important. Implementation arrangement is also very important because you could have the funding, you could have the intervention, but at the same time, the implementation arrangement may not favor you. And also look out for freed up funds. Like in Nigeria, we budgeted at the rate of 500, and then the exchange rate all of a sudden, when the new president came in, it shot up. And so there's always the par. So you always carry in your back pocket what you think that if funds are freed up, you could also fight for to include in the par. Otherwise, the par will be taken up by other populations. We are going through a transition period. The Global Fund is going through a transition period to country ownership. So understand that in as much as you're fighting for, control of the GC7, that definitely some years to come down the line, you may have to go back to the country. So mind your country institutions. In negotiating, try to show linkages and interconnectedness between PWID interventions, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, Global Fund strategies, and country strategies. If all of this can come together, your intervention and how it enhances SDGs, the Global Fund strategies, and country strategies, then you have a strong argument. What to expect or do? Expect conflicting interests with other civil societies and population demands. Expect opposition from government and national institutions. Expect proposal and ideas that will take away from your population, and try not to produce a knee-jerk rejection. Get technical support so that some of the things that you don't understand, at least you could get advice. Think through every proposal before agreeing to it. You don't just, like I said, produce a knee-jerk reaction and then at the end of the day find out that, oh, you made a mistake. Try to be as friendly to as many people as possible, even though you know that, all of us are fighting for a chunk of the same basket of funds. And also make sure that you're on the mailing list for information sharing, where the CCM shares information on, the grants negotiation process. Otherwise, you might lose out on changes that happen in last minute. And then free yourself from all other engagements and focus on the grants negotiations. That will be all from me. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I didn't past my time.
Thank you so much, Anidi. Really, so structured, clear, and even though, yes, as we could see, there was, the process was not as ideal as we would all hope. I think it's really a lot of very clear instructions from your experience. So thank you so much for that. It's really great. Our last speaker is from Ukraine, the National Ukrainian Network of People Who Use Drugs, Volna, Oleg Demaretsky. He's the executive director of the network. So Oleg will be speaking in Russian, and you can now turn on your respective translation channels and hear the translation then if you need. If you don't, then you just keep the original audio. Олег, I will be projecting your slides. Я буду сейчас показывать твои слайды.
Спасибо большое. Друзья, мне очень приятно сегодня поделиться опытом, на мой взгляд, уникальным Украины в подготовке предложения от Украины глобальному фонду на период 24-26 года. Краткая предыстория. Мы, как сообщество людей, употребляющих наркотики, как самая большая уязвимая КВИЧ-группа, на сегодняшний день это 300 тысяч людей, которые употребляют наркотики в Украине, четко понимали в 2022 году о том, что глобальный фонд, скорее всего, предложит Украине подать заявку, и мы точно понимали, с какими трудностями мы столкнемся. Наши выводы основывались на пережитых 3 локдаунах, связанными с ковид и полномасштабной войной Российской Федерации против украинского народа. В ноябре 2022 года состоялся национальный форум, 6-й национальный форум людей, употребляющих наркотики, где приняли участие основные органы центральной власти, представители министерств, представители Национального координационного совета по вопросам туберкулеза, ВИЧ-инфекции и СПИДа, где были четко зафиксированы стратегические направления, которые сообщество декларирует при своем участии продвигать в последующих годах. Так и случилось, что в декабре 2022 года Украина была приглашена к подаче заявки на новый цикл 24-26 годов глобального фонда на сумму практически $165 миллионов в полномасштабном объеме и так далее. Сообщество понимало о том, что те вызовы, которые стоят, это невозможность или недостаточность экспертизы в расчетах, интервенциях, большая конкуренция, дефицит бюджета, потому что война и, скажем так, бюджетных денег не хватает в стране, а некоторые статьи составляют ноль. Было предложено привлечь экспертов глобального фонда в виде технической помощи при поддержке input. Это первая линия для того, чтобы готовить свои интервенции. Вторая линия, мы приняли участие в глобальной кампании приглашения правительств стран, которые составляют участие в глобальном фонде, по наполнению достаточного финансирования глобального фонда. Напомню, что на тот период заканчивался этап финансирования глобального фонда, и вопрос состоял, сколько же денег будет у глобального фонда. В январе 2023 года сообщество получило техническую помощь в виде консультантов, где начались широкие консультации. 18 января 2023 года практически 2 национальные сети с 24 регионов Украины собрались для того, чтобы с участием экспертов определить стратегические направления, пожелания, четко проанализировать те барьеры, которые есть, и попробовать просчитать те интервенции для предоставления экспертной группы. Также само в январе 2023 года страной было принято решение готовить страновую заявку в первом окне. Действительно, времени оставалось 2 месяца, что казалось практически с вызовами, связанными с войной, с реализацией действующего цикла. Это фактически последний год финансирования 21-23 годов казался практически нереальным. В Кракове и в Варшаве на встрече ПИФАР Глобального фонда данное решение было пересмотрено в связи с тем, что действительно объем был достаточно большой. Стратегических направлений было масса, одним из которых было восстановление критической инфраструктуры медицинской. Именно составлял фактически необходимого финансирования в ожидаемом будущем практически на $1 миллиард, что превышало сумму предложения практически в 6 раз. Данное решение было в марте месяце пересмотрено для подготовки качественной заявки, которая бы относилась к 20 приоритетам глобального фонда с полным вовлечением гражданского общества, ключевых сообществ, заинтересованных сторон к подаче на второе окно. И я хотел бы в своей презентации буквально обозначить те этапы, которые были после этого. В апреле месяце страна подготовила первый драфт заявки и подала на TRP глобального фонда. Тем не менее, данная подача фактически была не взята во внимание и возвращена стране в связи с тем, что по комментариям и глобального фонда, и группы, которая рассматривала драфт заявки, заявка не отвечала на ключевые вопросы адвокационных целей, стратегических целей, и было недостаточное участие или видимость ключевых групп населения. После этого фактически была просто масса встреч, рабочих групп, переговоров с экспертами, объединения сетей, ключевых сообществ, обращений в глобальный фонд с просьбой как бы помочь стране определить свои приоритеты. И титаническими усилиями в мае месяце, в начале мая, была подана повторная заявка с уменьшенным финансированием, с определением ключевых приоритетов страны на рассмотрение TRP. Удачный этот опыт был, действительно, слышали из сообщества, очень много консультаций дали эксперты глобального фонда, не только с технической группы. Свои оценки приоритетности пересмотрела и техническая экспертная группа, которая от стороны была очень такая весомая, это практически 50 людей разных, пересмотрели свои приоритеты. И в конце мая 2023 года было решением Национального совета противодействия туберкулеза, ВИЧ-инфекции, СПИДа при Кабинете министров подана полноценная заявка на глобальный фонд. Что уникально, что получилось как бы в результате этой работы, помимо того, что ушла заявка на рассмотрение, были потом замечания, были еще что-то. Было 2 весомых встречи в июне и в июле с участием ПИФАР и Глобального фонда, где были определены основные реципиенты в случае поддержки. Этими основными реципиентами были выбраны Центр общественного здоровья Министерства здравоохранения Украины, сеть 100% жизни и Альянс общественного здоровья. Было предложено четко определить 20 приоритетов, то, что рекомендовал Глобальный фонд, вовлечение ключевых сообществ и поддержка очень четких интервенций, которые бы ложились бы в каскад предоставляемых услуг страны с сохранением критических инфраструктур. Это касалось и ключевых сообществ. Напомню, что страна работала по 3 ключевым направлениям. Это туберкулез, ВИЧ-инфекция, RCCH, и путем вмешательства 9 ключевых сообществ была определена 4-я ключевая группа RCCH Community, и куда входили по большому счету и сообщества в том числе. Сообщества отстаивали свои приоритеты общей стоимостью, если речь идет о людях, употребляющих наркотики. Высокую приоритетность имела интервенции практически на $3 миллиона. Тем не менее, до страновой заявки, до финальной ее стадии вошли ключевые приоритеты, которые относились к развитию сообщества, к правовой помощи, к проведению мониторинга с силами и с участием сообщества и правовой компонент. Что же получилось в результате? В сентябрь-октябрь месяц страна окончательно были проведены переговоры CCM, участием Организации Объединенных Наций, представителей Глобального фонда, представителей основных реципиентов, где был четко представлен каскад финансирования и так далее. Почему я обращаю на это внимание? Дело не в суммах, которые сообщество смогло отстоять, хотя и этим стоит тоже похвастаться. Организация «Волна», как национальная сеть людей, употребляющих наркотики, получила возможность на протяжении 3 лет поддержки 4 ключевых интервенций, поддержка комьюнити и потенциала сообщества, правовая помощь, проведение мониторинга силами сообщества и параюридическая помощь. И национальная сеть женщин, употребляющих наркотики, также получила 2 интервенции в виде поддержки национальной сети и в виде параюридической помощи на сумму практически $1,5 миллиона. Это дорогого как бы стоит при дефиците, как я вначале как бы говорил, и так далее. Но ключевым является даже не это достижение, а то, что впервые, наверное, в региональном даже разрезе организации сообществ включены в страновую заявку как ответственные партнеры. Такого не было никогда, всегда были основные реципиенты выбраны, всегда через них проходило финансирование, то при этой работе были признаны сами сообщества, которые были прописаны в страновом документе, который называется проект предложения финансирования Украины глобальным фондом на период 24-26 года. В принципе, можно было бы закончить делиться своим опытом, если бы не одно маленькое но. Я хотел бы сказать то, что я обратил внимание в презентации, хотел бы сказать на словах, это о том, если задаться вопросом, а достаточно ли влияния при таких успехах, о которых говорит Олег, достаточно ли влияния сообщества, достаточно ли, скажем так, давление не совсем хорошее слово, но тем не менее, для того, чтобы принимать ключевые решения. На наш взгляд, нет. И риски были огромные. Допустим, техническая экспертная группа при первом своем заседании оценила все интервенции ключевых сообществ, в том числе людей, употребляющих наркотики, меньше 7-8 баллов. Что говорило о том, что практически ни одна интервенция, поданная сообществами, практически не попадает в предложение от страны и так далее. Достаточно ли сообщество может влиять и достаточно ли их голос имеет вес при поддержке развития ключевых интервенций и так далее? Напомню, что при работе над заявкой глобального фонда самому глобальному фонду в связи с войной было представлено о том, что у нас разрушены критические инфраструктуры, в том числе и медицинские, и грант должен быть 90% практически построен на, скажем так, восстановление критических инфраструктур и медицинских. Ну, вы представляете себе, сколько нужно было дебатов проводить, сколько нужно было проводить переговоров, писать официальных как бы заявлений и позиций для того, чтобы изменить данное положение. Так же самое я хотел бы сказать, что, скорее всего, ответ на этот вопрос сам собой напрашивается, что голосов крайне мало и нужно укреплять потенциал сообщества. Отсюда мы хотели бы поделиться в данной презентации о том, что есть 4 интервенции, которые попали в пар. Мы слабо верим в то, что они будут профинансированы, но тем не менее, что такое пар? Эта страна признает высокий приоритет этих интервенций в каскаде услуг в процессах противодействия туберкулеза, ВИЧ-инфекции и СПИДа. Данные интервенции относятся к 2 национальным сетям Всеукраинского объединения людей, живущих с наркозависимостью «Волна», и Всеукраинского объединения женщин, живущих с наркозависимостью, которые напрямую поддерживают каскад услуг в виде разработки мониторинга силами сообщества, в виде проведения исследований и в виде покрытия экстренных потребностей. Напомню, в моей стране война и, скажем так, разбудова или развитие системы медицины, услуг будут практически недоступны для людей, которым, попросту говоря, нечего есть, нечего одеть, не за что доехать под бомбежками и так далее. Поэтому мы надеемся о том, что не только глобальный фонд, АПИФАР и другие заинтересованные стороны смогут покрыть те интервенции, которые вошли в пар, и они не останутся, как и в предыдущие года, просто прописанными на бумаге с отметкой «высокий приоритет». Я буду рад ответить на ваши вопросы. Безумно рад был поделиться с вами новостями. Слава Украине!
Спасибо большое, Олег. Слава Украине. Героям слава. Thank you so much, Oleg. Thank you for this inspiring presentation, and amidst all the terrible, catastrophic consequences of the full-scale invasion from Russia, you have achieved amazing results. We are standing full side by you. Thank you so much, all the speakers. So now the floor is open to ask questions. And I am just looking through if anything has been asked. We somehow didn't get any questions in the Q&A. So please feel free to raise your hand and ask questions to everyone here. We have all the speakers that are still here, so please feel free to ask questions if you have any. And in the meantime, while you are thinking about your question, I have one for, Hyang, who you raised your hand. You have a question.
Yes, Gaia, thank you so much. I really wanted to take this opportunity for me to interact with the representatives to better understand some of the challenges that you have discussed and to understand maybe the support needs. And all three presentations were so clear and really on the challenges and how you have engaged and very practical tips. But just for me, for my own understanding and how better we can and support you. But Gaia, please, I am really sorry. Please facilitate your the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a question to you, Hyang, in relation to your presentation and in particular to the minimum expectations that you mentioned. And really, I think this is the biggest difference that we can see in Grant Cycle 7. And we really just want to make sure that this, is being thought through and implemented for people who use drugs as well, which is, one of the most criminalized populations among all the other ones too. So how do you also, what do you suggest? What can communities do in a situation when, as you say, they can reach out to the CCM and to the country team or the respective PRs, but they're being continuously blocked, and their recommendations and their priorities are still not being put through. So very often what we heard before is that there is this list of priorities, but what happens midway through and during the grant making, that these priorities are sidelined. How do you suggest to appeal for that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. Listening to Rosemary and other presenters, I have realized that despite maybe the policies and the rules that we have in place, minimum expectations, maximum expectations, often the implementation is really a challenge. And the fact that the Global Fund Secretariat is so far away, sometimes we don't actually understand what's going on in the country level, whether the policies are being implemented and communities are supported to engage. So in the case where, for instance, I think it's kind of linked to what Rosemary have mentioned, even as a key populations representatives and the civil society representatives, you are not able to get the date from the CCM when you need to engage, how you can engage, then please reach out to the directly to country team or directly to the CRG. I think we do have a CRG, the main, the email address where the community can reach out to us, or on the website. When you go into the CRG site where you can access the TA request, you will see the CRG department website. So please do reach out to us. Even within the Global Fund, this is a really ongoing push, right? With the country teams, with the different departments or the colleagues who are engaged in this process, while we all want to see the strong community engagement, how we want to see it with what policies and how we implement that, we do have internal, there are series of internal discussions going on. While we may not be the decision makers within the Global Fund, the CRD department, we can certainly push your the challenges and recommendations and discuss them with the country teams. So please do reach out to Global Fund Secretariat if your communication with the CCM Secretariat and your PRs are not working.
Thanks so much, Young. Thanks. Very clear. I see hands from Vishnu and afterwards Rosemary. Vishnu, do you want to unmute yourself? Hi, we can see you, but we can't hear you. Hello, Vishnu? There may be some issues with connection. Hi, Vishnu, can you say something? I don't. Okay, I think we may have lost him for a second, but hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can, and we can see you. Hi.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity, especially thank to input, and I can see familiar faces. So my question to Hyung, it was a wonderful presentation from Kenya, Nigeria, and it's a wonderful effort that have been made by Ukraine team. Although in a difficult situation, I really, on behalf of Nepal drug users community, would like to salute them. So Nepal condition is quite different. Yes, we receive TA support through Global Fund for the GC Cycle 7, but we had a vigorous consultation. We prioritize everything, and throughout the country we consultate. And in our country, our PWID representative very strong. There is an executive member, CCM executive member from PWID community. So we do have a civil society strong position in CCM Nepal, but finally the PR selection process gone very destructive, because government decided they will have a multiple PR, they call UI, and UI was reviewed and submitted to Global Fund. And all of a sudden, Ministry of Health, he decided to, government wants to be sole PR. They really don't want to be multiple PR. So Global Fund also decided, okay, Global Fund ready to support government, but there were some area need the commitment that the procedure had to be ensured by the government, and they said these are the areas we need to improve and inform us. So government did not do anything. So GC7 was submitted in August, and TRP reviewed. TRP resent back to the country, and they decided to resubmit proposal in February window, in February. 18th or 24th. I really don't remember the exact date. The February window. The but situation in the country is completely deadlocked. Neither CCM meeting has been are called, nor the executive meeting has called. Even the CCM secretary don't know anything. We have been keep on asking, even on the occasion of SD, we all community demonstrated, and we call and we submitted a joint statement to ensure growth now. So, you know, we are in a very difficult situation in the country, and we don't know how the CRZ take in this situation. Twice in the country, they had a high-level meeting with the government, but there is no any solution till the date. And we don't know whether the government will resubmit proposal, GC7, although we PWID community did excellent work through the TA support. And we had a wonderful working relation with the writing team, the National Writing Task Team, AIDS committee, and we accomplished our job, and many priorities, the community priority was addressed in GC7. And the main, the key area, the women refugees and harm reduction was high prioritized. Hepatitis intervention, treatment was high prioritized. So although vigorous and excellent work, and this time we have community has excellent experience in a growth on grant making process. Although we don't know, today's 12th December, and we keep on asking what to do. And today we all key networks, we a little bit had a discussion. Okay, maybe we can have a demonstration in front of Ministry of Health to pressurize government, call for the CCM meeting. And what happened, you know, the final meeting of the CCM meeting was called to submit proposal. The meeting was invited in 8 o'clock in the morning. The meeting continues went till 1 o'clock night. And the decision was not made. Process decision was not agreed to make. All the government CCM representative, they hijacked CCM and they said, government want to be sole PR because minister wants. So we don't want to make any multiple PR, and we don't want to revisit our decision. So what is the CRG, you know, the Glow Fund, you know, we have been talking with the portfolio manager frequently. So in this context, you know, how the Glow Fund, you know, we are worried about, and the government said, okay, we are ready to give medicine to the people. So the overall HIV, TB, and malaria program, medicine is not only the issues. So what about the prevention program? And that's a that is the questions, you know. From our side, you know, we do our best, you know, pressurize government, and everything we will do from our side. But we would like to in this kind of scenario, do you have experience? Because Nepal is implementing a Glow Fund program since 2002, and we never had this kind of experience. Although we have a civil society member, PWID, FSW, LGBTI, they are strong member in CCM, but they are helpless now. So they don't know. And we even don't know whether the CCM exists in this country or not. So in this situation, how the Glow Fund takes? So Hyung, my question is very long, but the situation, I would like to inform you the situation of the country. So this is.
Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you so much for that. And this is a really difficult question because Nepal's case, Nepal's situation that you are facing is really unique. So we have understood from the moment, you know, from the funding request submission in August that, you know, government wanted to be a sole PR, which we did not fully agree because we do believe in community-led programming and responses, and it was not clear how the government would be able to really cater for all the key populations, that are supported by the Global Fund. We did have a reservation, and hence the conversation is going on with the country team. I can assure you that while we are facing the deadlock, the country team, Stefan and Chiara, they are both fully engaged in the discussions with the Ministry of Health and internally to see what other mechanisms there are available for us to really break this deadlock. But it's a long discussion, it's very sensitive, and because it's a politically very sensitive discussion, I am not able to really share, all the discussions or the options that are on table. But I just want to assure you that we fully support the community and civil society position, and we will continue the conversation through the CCM, through the Ministry of Health, to really find the solution that is workable for all of us. And I have seen how fast, recovering Nepal and with the partners can turn around. Very impressive of the program proposer with positive action. So there is no doubt within the Global Fund that civil society partners are strong and they are implementing great programs that we are hoping to fully being able to support the continuation of the community-led and civil society-led program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Thanks, Bishna, for raising this question. And Heyang, yeah, we hope that the situation will indeed be resolved. So looking forward to that. I see one more hand from Rosemary. Please come in. Ask a question. Yeah.
I just want to respond to Heyang concerns about not really being engaged in the grant-making process. So I know we had a CCM meeting, I think 2 to 3 weeks ago, and we'll be having another CCM meeting on the 15th. The meeting that we had was to come up with suggestions about SR selection process and the criteria that will be used, which I think is also part of grant making. And yes, we were involved as communities and we were able to air our concerns and views of how we want this to go. And we were keen to ensure that even in the selection process, the affirmative action of community-led organizations should be put in place by both PRs that are implementing the grant that is supposed to support communities. I would say that we are not really helpless to the point that probably we may want to engage the country team and the CRG. But when it comes to the 15th and it's not really clear as to when this is bound to take place, then probably we may ask the Secretariat to respond to us, or we may come further and request your support. I believe the delay to the grant-making process may have been initiated by, I know we had ICASA, and most of our members were going to ICASA. That was the first week of December. I think they're coming back this week, and some came back over the weekend. And from there, Christmas Kenya closes early for Christmas. From around 17th, you find most of organizations, especially community-led organizations, close. And for the sex workers, after we celebrate our International Day of Violence Against Sex Workers on 17th, we close our offices. So probably this will happen in January. But I think our issue is really like, during the funding request, we had a roadmap that was very clear that after this country, maybe after this engagement, the next engagement will be this one. After this one, the next. So we could be able to plug in and know what is happening at every particular point. But after that, and after the TRP recommendations, and maybe after what was acted on, there's very minimal engagements and interactions with communities. You find even as representatives, we are not able to tell back our constituencies what to expect and when to expect or to be expected. So maybe this will be, I've seen Hamed also sits at the CCM, and I've seen he's in this call. Maybe what we can do on the 15th is that we can can really be bold and ask them when we are likely to start the grant making and how we want to ensure that communities will be engaged in the grant making. And if we feel that they are not answering us as expected, and they're not really committing to have communities be engaged in the grant making process, then maybe we can take we can probably go and engage the country team and the CRG. But it's good, it's a wake-up call, and I believe we want to engage on the 15th and really come up with concrete days. So as we are closing, we're able to tell our communities, expect us to be on the table on the 1st of January, 2nd of January, and what is expected of us. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosemary. Rosemary, just to confirm, you're representing Kenya, right?
Yes, I'm representing the key population in Kenya.
Sure.
Yes.
I think, you know what? I think it's always helpful to have a conversation with a CRG regional advisor. You know, it's not to report any issues, but, you know, just to get to know that you have the, in a way, connection with a CRG department who are meant to work with the communities. I'll be very happy to link you up with our new CRG, the regional advisor, investment support advisor, to bounce up ideas and, you know, flex some of the concerns that you have. If the concern, you are not able to solve it, then, you know, it's good to escalate to the CRG, at least have a conversation. Maybe we can provide such information. And Rosemary, while you're on the call, I just want to ask one question.
Yeah.
You aware that Kenya is a breaking down barriers country and receives additional human rights matching fund?
Yes, we are aware of that.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I hope you guys are fully connected to that conversation as well.
We are aware of it, but again, I would say, especially for the communities that are not SR and are not implementers, we really don't benefit much from that grant. So maybe it's yet another conversation. I know we put it in the writing and we really came up with activities that we felt will be able to benefit communities in as far as human rights is concerned. And we are all seeing all that is happening in Kenya, especially with the bill of the gay, the LGBTIQ bill, that really we expected that grant would have been able to support to ensure that we are able to make milestones and we are able maybe to push back and we're able to fight back all that is happening. But you find that whatever the amounts that are supposed to support in the human rights and whatever effect this should have to our communities is really not as expected, for lack of a better word. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very lively conversation and opportunity to listen into that. I see a hand from Ahmed, and I think that will be our last question or comment. If there's anything else, please post it now in the chat box and we'll make sure to reply afterwards. Please, Ahmed.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Gaia, and for the whole team. And yes, just mine actually is not really a question, but just to confirm, like we have that as part of the agenda, approving the grant-making team, because there was a process of constituting the grant-making team, and here I'm specific with Kenya, and also the issue of SR selection, TRC. So those are, I know those are very quite a hot agenda when it comes to that, but it's so unfortunately that these agenda are not put first, are always put after many other agendas, so that too. But it is my my humble submission that here with Rosemary, I think before we adapt the agenda on 15th, we should say that these are two things that should be fronted because of time. So maybe we will have clear feedback on that as to whether as community do we have opportunity as well for advocacy and all that. yeah, that is what a quick comment I wanted to give. Thank you, and over. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ahmed. And thank you all, everyone, for really amazing presentations and all your inputs. It was really great to hear all of you. I would just like to invite one of our speakers, Anedi, to give the closing remarks. And before Anedi, you give a few words in the end. There was a question from Vishnu, if you could share a community annex to, share your experience and lessons from that. I think this is already should be an open access, right? So if you could share, I would be gladly also share with Vishnu.
Okay, so I'll try to share it. Thank you very much, Vishnu, for asking. But before I go to sharing it, when I get it, I'd like to say that we were not involved in the writing of the community annex. And it was one of the downsides of the grant writing. We tried to get involved, but it was handled by the national agency, and we didn't get an opportunity to contribute. We asked many times, but did not get any response. Okay, and thank you everybody for joining. And I just want to say that if you to engage in the grant making, especially for Kenya, with all the issues, the grants process from grant writing, community consultation, grant writing, negotiations, and everything. It's a process that needs to be followed as a step by step, and also the link must be established. So it's not an uncoordinated activity. So if you have been engaged in the grant writing process, then it will make it easier to be engaged in the grant making process. But as much as possible, what you need is just to have as many allies as possible, even those you don't want to work with. UNH is going to be there as an observer. Of course, you can always depend on UNH, even when the UNH in your country might look not helpful, but you can always task them that is their job as UNH to provide that support to key populations. And apart from that, the community will also have to be involved. You might not have, you might not really have the community come together, to make this decision of how to engage in the grant making. But if one person has the opportunity to get in there, I think that one person can represent the community. So I know if we continue pushing like this, we can get more to the community of people who use drugs. And thank you very much, Input, for organizing this. Thank you, the Global Fund. I think the Global Fund is opening up to communities now, but it is also left for us, the communities, to also take our stand and get involved. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Anedi. And thanks everyone. If you would like to turn on your cameras now for a quick photo before we all go back to our daily lives to take a quick photo. Thank you. All right. Done. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you have any questions, Young posted our email, and I will share also the slides and the contacts with everyone else. Thank you. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks.
Please, if you
Thank
can
you.
share the Nigerian slides with us, it would be nice. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Will do.
Yeah,
Will do.
Ahmed, Francis.
Anidi, Ahmed, how are you?
Hey.
What's up,
Thank you
brother?
very much. Bye.
Yeah.
Francis,
Bye-bye.
good to see you.
Дякую,
Bye.
Bye.
дякую, до
Bye.
побачення.
Ahmed, vipi?
Ahmed, hey, brother.
Hi,
Promise.
Nidi. How are you?
What's up? I'm
What's
good.
up? Doing great. Bye bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Now, yeah, you dey connect, Abi?